Hi, good day to everyone, and welcome to our Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics subject. Today, we are going to talk about the significance of culture, social, political, and economic symbols and practices. And for today's objectives, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to first identify cultural, social, political, and economic symbols. Second, discuss cultural, social, political, and economic practices. Third, explain the significance of cultural, social, political, and economic symbols and practices. And fourth, compare and contrast the significance of cultural, social, political, and economic symbols and practices. Now let's have symbols and symbolism. Let's start with the definition of symbols and symbolism. Symbol is an object, word, or action that stands for something else without natural relationship that is culturally defined. Symbols such as gestures, signs, objects, signals, and words help people understand the world. And symbols provide clues to understanding experiences. Not only that, they also convey recognizable meanings that are shared by society. On the other hand, symbolism is when something represents abstract ideas or concepts. It assigns names, denominations, and defined relations between various elements like actors, actions, goals, means, objects, values, etc., articulated within a narrative. At this point, let's learn the different types of symbols that we're going to talk about today. We have cultural symbol, social symbol, political symbol, and economic symbol. Now let's define each one of them. Cultural symbol is the manifestation that signifies the ideology of a particular culture that has meaning within that culture. While social symbol, it is relating to human societies and its modes of organization. We have political symbol, which is used to represent a political standpoint, and it is seen in various media and forms such as banners, flags, mottos, etc. And the last one, the economic symbol, it is used in production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services like currency, market, labor, demands, and other economic activities. Now let's talk about the functions of symbols and symbolism. Symbols and symbolisms are used and can be seen anywhere in our daily lives. So social symbols are used to transfer culture, ideologies, or beliefs from a group of people to another group of people, or from our elders to the new generations of people. These are also used to preserve traditions or beliefs of a certain group of people. Now, all symbols containing face and hidden value in functional perspective holds a greater meaning and importance than the face value. So when we talk about symbols, these can be utilized to create movements, spread ideas, and share advocacies that surpasses time and distance. Now, what are the different cultural symbols and practices? Some of the common examples are objects, figures, sounds, and colors. Also, sometimes it can be in a form of facial expressions, word interpretations, or gestures, such as handshakes and hand signals instead of symbols and or signs. For example, the victory sign in the Philippines, where you hold your index and middle finger up, it would mean victory sign here or in some parts of the world. But in other countries, this would also mean peace. Cultural practices are the manifestations of a culture or subculture, especially concerning the traditional or customary practices of a particular ethnic or other cultural groups. Examples of these cultural practices are religious and spiritual, medical treatments, culinary, and child rearing practices. On the other hand, religious beliefs have many symbols within their doctrines and books, and these are only a few of the widely known religious symbols. First, the crescent moon and the star represent Islam. The cross represents Christianity, and David's star symbolizes Judaism. Now, these are some cultural symbols in the Philippines. The national items and symbols are used to create Filipino identity and, of course, to promote solidarity and unity in our nation. The first one is the national hymn or Lupang Hinirang, which is one of these cultural symbols. The next one is, of course, the Philippine flag. And we have here the jeepney. Basically, the jeepney was not meant to be a symbol, but it became one since the Philippines is known for jeepneys instead of other public utility vehicle. Now, the last one is the Philippine eagle. It is also considered a cultural symbol, and it can even symbolize bravery, courage, and strength. There are many cultural practices in the Philippines, and some of our practices coincide with our cousins in other Asian countries. So let's start with traditional medical practices. Even though we are living in modern times, a lot of Filipinos still believe and trust the methods of an albularyo. And not only that, a lot of us also utilize herbal medicine and alternative medicines as opposed to expensive synthetic medicines. In terms of religious practices, Philippines is rich in religious and spiritual rituals. And these are just two of the many rituals and practices here in the Philippines. The first one is Ubando Festival, which is in Bulacan. Now, it is believed to have caused fertility to the women. The second one is Panaad sa Camiguin. This local pilgrim in Camiguin serves as an act of penance. Let's talk about culinary practices in the Philippines. Now, it is a common thing among Filipinos to have 3 meals a day and eat rice with one or more viands each meal. Some of the most famous Filipino foods are adobo and sinigang. And aside from that, Filipinos are also snack lovers. And a common snack are the various street foods like balut or fish balls. And also, different ethnicities have specialty rice cakes, but the most popular ones are suman, puto bumbong, puto, and bibingka. When it comes to child rearing practices in the Philippines, Filipino children are brought up to be respectful to elders. And some of the common practices are the following. First one, manu po, and the use of po and opo are taught to children. Next one is obedience to parents and elders are also inculcated in the minds of children, as well as not talking back to the elders. Another one is meal time, which is considered to be a family time, especially dinner. And another one is the presence of ninong and ninang, or the godfather or godmother, who are usually pestered during December because their godchildren keep on asking them for aguinaldo or gifts. Another one is the form of punishment in the Philippines. So there are punishments utilized for being naughty and disobedient, but a common one is the use of belts or. Next up, we have social symbols and practices. Visible external denotation of one's social position is an indicator of one's social or economic status. When you say social symbol, it is relating to how individuals and groups interact and interpret various cultural symbols. Now, these social symbols and practices can be seen in clothing and possessions, societal recognition, material possessions, and other recognized symbols used worldwide, such as white dove for peace, red heart for love, etc. These are the common social symbols in terms of colors. For black, we have evil and death. For white, it's purity and peace. For purple, it's royalty. For red, it's blood, war, passion, and danger. For yellow, it's violence and bubbly. And for blue, it's calm and peaceful. Now, it would really vary from one culture to another. For political symbols and practices, these are artifacts or objectifications of different political meanings, especially related to power. Now, political symbols and practices are also related to the practices done in administration, distribution, and attainment of power, bureaucratic composition, etc. So, political practices are common things that are done within a state or country. And these are the common political symbols in terms of colors. For black, it represents anarchism and fascism. For blue, it represents conservatism and monarchism. For brown, it's Nazism. For gold, it's capitalism. For green, environmentalism. Lavender, homosexuality. For orange, it's populism. And for pink, it's feminism. In addition, we have red that represents democratic socialism, and communism, and yellow that represents liberalism and libertarianism. As you may have noticed, in the Philippines, the Liberal Party is represented by the color yellow, and PDP Laban, the political party of President Duterte, is represented by colors blue and red, since it describes itself as a democratic socialist party. And there are other political parties that are also represented by their own political symbols. The following are also common political symbols in the Philippines. The first one, Malacanang Palace, signifies the executive branch. A bell and a gavel represent the legislative branch, while the judiciary branch is represented by a balance scale. Now let's talk about common political practices in the Philippines. There are actually plenty of political practices, but I have here some examples. The first one is the political dynasty. Now, despite the clamor of passing the anti-dynasty bill, political dynasty is still rampant in the Philippines. What they do is they just interchange terms with the grandfather, the father to the son, and then back again to the father. Now, this is because of the existence of powerful and influential families or clans in certain areas or regions in the Philippines. Now, people seem to think that these areas are owned by these powerful families. And apart from that, we also have the wealthy and influential celebrities who have become politicians in the Philippines. Now, even though there are other more qualified candidates for the public post, still these celebrity candidates would normally win the elections because they are known by the public, especially by the masses. The next one is the palakasan system. Now, this is when someone has a backer or a relative within the office or somebody powerful who can give that person such favor or a position in the government. We also have the traditional politicians, or popularly known as trapo. There are still quite a number of rightists or conservatives in the Philippines. This is why we like to stick to traditional practices and procedures. Trapo is now a dirty connotation of everything undesirable ascribed to a politician. In fact, there were a lot of politicians who were asked of their views and opinions about traditional politicians, and some said that politicians who will say and do anything, including dirty tricks, to get elected or get what they want, is considered a trapo. And it also means a rag in the Philippines, which aptly describes this type of politician. Now we have also the Catholic Church. Why is it included? Why is Catholic Church included? Because Catholic Church has a strong influence in the political arena in the country. Even though it is specifically stated in the 1987 Constitution, Article 2, Section 6, the separation of church and the state shall be inviolable. Still, Catholic Church has a strong influence and a strong involvement in the political landscape of the country. Next one is power revolts. Every time we have a huge issue with the government, we go to the streets and protest. And the most common ones are the EDSA revolution that ousted Marcos and EDSA DOS that forced Arab to step down the presidency. Now let's have the common economic symbols. Economic symbols represent economic standpoints which may be seen in various media such as stock exchange, money and currency, gold and petroleum, life insurance, banking, etc. And these are some currencies and their symbols. And one thing to note here is some currencies here have the same name but can be distinguished with a country. For example, countries like Canada, the USA, Singapore, Australia, they use dollars. Now, to differentiate, the first letter of the country is added before the symbol. Apart from the ones I mentioned earlier, these are also the common examples of economic symbols. Now, these are used in economic textbooks and are also utilized in international news, forums, and journals for uniformity and standardization. Lastly, we have the significance of symbols and symbolisms. Now, symbols and symbolism are practically everywhere, right? And as rational thinkers, we have been making and giving meanings to symbols for a long time. And symbols have been a part of our lives and growth as humankind. And the usage of these symbols and symbolism has given mankind an avenue to communicate with different groups of people, influence other different ideologies, and preserve values that were transferred from generations to generations. There you go. We're done with the discussion on the different symbols and practices in the Philippines. So we're done talking about cultural symbols, social symbols, political symbols, and economic symbols. I hope you learned something from our discussion today. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Bye.